Today we're going to be installing the Draft Dodger Surface Mail Slot. Let's get into it. The first thing that we need to do is to check the dimensions of your mail slot, as well as its respective dimensions on the door. You can see here that this door has some decorative trim, so it's important that before you purchase it, you take a measurement of your door to see if the measurements that are provided fit. In this case, our surface mount mail slot is 29.3 or 0.2 centimeters or 11.5 inches by 3 inches or 7.5 centimeters. And the trim that we have here is 4.5 inches or 11.5 centimeters, and we will then have to consider where we positioning it onto the door. Because the trim ends on both edges, just out of the focus right here, as well as the edge right here, we are going to want that centered. It is up to you how you want it to be installed, if you would prefer it closer or further or center. There's always the other options of putting it into more of a tighter spot to have it more concealed, but everything still stays the same. You must measure your space to make sure that it fits the dimensions that are provided for the surface mail slot. It is not just on this side that you must measure, it is on the reverse side as well. So I've already partially prepped the area, but we're going to continue to prep. Some of the first things after measurement you need to do is to clean your space. So right now we have a couple pieces of masking tape in our work area. We've protected some of the hardware in the distance. And for the overfill, you can use anything really. What I have here is just some retired towels, and I'm going to place that and tie that in with another piece of masking tape across the top of the towel and the piece of masking tape. So I have a protected area now. It's also important to protect every surface that you think you're going to be put into contact with. For example, the surface closest to me here, I'm going to put a little bit more. You should also do this on the other side, or the reverse side, to make sure that when you take the measurements, we will then bring them to the other side and check to see if the spacing is the same as the front side. Now you could start with the interior or the exterior side of the door. For this situation, I am starting with the exterior, and I have removed it off of the door hinges and placed it on a horizontal surface, more for ergonomics of video than anything. And I have all my tools ready beside me at my disposal. So we're going to prep the area. And like I said, some of the few things before you really start deciding to cut the door, you want to make sure that you've considered all scenarios for what is interfering. Am I taking out an old mail slot? Am I making the hole bigger? You must consider all those factors to know what tools you will need. For this instance today, I know that I will need some moderate specialty tool to cut a groove in this tight area. And it might be the way that I choose today, but you do not have to copy it. This is just to show one option for installation. So I will continue with some taping to make sure that we're all protected, all happy. And then I will flip the door over and continue with that as well. You could also use garbage bags, paper, any other sort of just material that will keep the door protected so that you're not cutting into it, having chips of wood or metal that are going to scratch the paint. You want to make sure that everything that you can do in your power to protect the door, you should. Now I'm going moderately here. This is just the shot of this area, but the point will get across. If your door is really dirty, I would actually clean the door beforehand and dry it off before you try to adhere any masking tape to it. I would try to look for a masking tape with a wide width so that you don't need to have so many pieces that go across. And you can also use a piece of paper, put masking tape around it. You don't need to fully masking tape. So let's say this side is pretty well established now, and I'm going to proceed to flip it over, and then we will take some measurements. There is already some measurements here, but that will be for later. So again, we'll be installing the Draft Dodger surface mail slot onto the store. So we're on the rear now, or we can say the white side for this video. And what we're going to do is the same thing. We're going to first protect the area. Make sure that everything is well kept. If there's dirt, I'd recommend wiping it off now, as you won't really have the opportunity to for a bit. You can take a cloth, give it a quick pass to make sure that there's no interference with the tape adhering with any sort of bumps or lumps. If you're trying to pass an electric tool across or have a level. I will now proceed to protect the hardware. If you feel comfortable and the hardware is in your way, you can also remove the hardware and give it a little cleaning, and then put it on afterwards. I'm now going to put, for me here, I have a little bit of extra trim. Well, I think what might be important now, before I set that piece up, is to measure the space and have it ready. So, on the white side of this door is a good time to measure your space. So this is how I would normally approach a situation like this. What are my constraints, firstly? Well, my first constraint, if I was to look at the width between these two decorative trims, are we're trying to match both spaces between the mail slot and the trim. We're trying to make sure that they are equal. So let's take a couple measurements and let's see how it holds. So what I see right off the bat is your tape measure might have some interference. So I got to be careful with the Sharpie. This is why having masking tape is important. Maybe I should have put another layer here, but I'll be very careful. What I see here is 11.5 centimeters, and I see 4.5 inches. Now I'm writing them towards me, so my apologies for that. We now need to see what the mail slot has. So what I see here is 7.7 centimeters and 3 inches. Great. So we're trying to find the space between to make them equal. So we can do it pretty quickly. We're going to start with metric. So 11.5 is our total width, and we are now going to subtract 7.7 centimeters from the total, which will give us our space, 3.8 centimeters. And because we know that that is actually the margin on both sides, we need to just divide it by 2. If that case, I believe we are at 1.9 centimeters. If I do it in inches, 4.5 minus 3 inches, 4.5 minus 3, we will have a space of 1.5 inches, and we will divide that by 2, which will give us 3/4 of an inch on either side. 1.9 centimeters should equal to 3/4. Double it out. 1.9 equals to 3/4. So this is our first one. But we should now take care of our length. The next constraint that I see is I want to center it between the ends of this decorative trim and the door. The decorative trim is currently centered to the door, so I don't need to go to the full width of the door. I can go to the width of the decorative trim. If yours is different, please be considerate on how you approach doing this math to make sure that it's centered. So for the decorative trim, we will start it in, we'll do it this side, and we will say that it is 61. Okay, so let's put it over here, 61 centimeters. We know that our nail slot is 29.4. We're going to do the subtraction again. We're going to have a 0.6. So that's 31.6. And now we divide that by 2. So we now get 15.8 centimeters. 16, 30, that should be correct. So we are saying that 15.8 and 6 1/4. 15.8 and 6 1/4. Perfect. So this and this are our numbers in metric and imperial for the width, while the 3 1/4 or 1.9 centimeters is our measurement for the height. Great. Now that that's all written out on there, I'm going to switch pens and we are going to clean up the area a little bit to make sure that it's all protected. I think a good resource to have would be a calculator or a pen and paper to write some stuff down before you embark on doing all these measurements. Always good to double check. As you can see, I made a calculation error at the start. That's okay. Sometimes it's like that. Now what we're going to do is put some towels to protect the work surface. I should not keep anything on the surface. You should not keep anything on the surface either, so that it stays clean and there's no damage that occurs. So we've accomplished the protection of the zone. We've accomplished our measurements. And now what we need to do is actually put those measurements into practice. You know, we could just eyeball it. If you felt confident, set yourself up. Do your eyeball. Use your judgment. There are other ways to do this. I'm showing the math because I like doing the math and double checking and making sure that I know it's going to be centered when it goes on. Careful when you put your masking tape on that you do. When you take these measurements from the walls now, you have no interference. Okay, so how I normally approach this at this step is I will set up some markings along the width and the height to indicate where my zone is going to be. These measurements are going to be the 4 corners intersecting of this surface nail slot. So I'm going to start with something easy, and let's do the 3 1/4 or the 1.9 centimeters. Now you can choose many different tools to do this. It's a little tough because the depth is, I've got a high decorative trim here, so you will have some limiting factors that you're going to deal with, but I can push it down and I can set myself up saying that I'm going to be at 1.9 centimeters or 3/4 of an inch. Hopefully the blue can delineate between the red. And I will do the same on the other side. And I'll do it in the 3/4 now. Actually, I won't use this. I will set up another tool to hopefully show that there's other options. This is just a regular ruler that you can use as well. Great. So I've got markings on either side, 3 of them. I will then be able to trace a line, but I will go now and I will do the 15.8 centimeters or the 6 1/4. This one is probably pretty simple. You can use a tape measure or a ruler, but I will have a 6 1/4, listed there, and I will set this up again, and we're going to have to pull it off a little bit. I'm going to put a mark on the actual edge of the trim here, but that's no problem. That doesn't make any difference. On this side, I've got some obstruction. What I will do is I will bring the 6 1/4 to the edge, and I will then mark the corner of the ruler. And now I will flip it and do this similar thing, butt up the edge of the ruler to the edge of the decorative trim, and I will set it up to go to 6 1/4. Make sure that it's not a 9 disguised. Sometimes you get troubles with that. Okay, now we have our delineation, and we can see that I've marked these across with the beaks pointing up and down. That is our width, funnily enough, our width, and the beaks pointing across is going to be our height. Now we just need to mark it all. So we line up our edges to the points, account for the thickness of your Sharpie or whatever pencil you're using as best as you can. Remember, we're not going for complete perfect. There is slight tolerances in the cutting, there's slight tolerances in the trim, there's tolerances everywhere. There we go. Let's get this one set up. Pull it back a bit. It's a little off, but that's okay. There we go. Now, if you have to go further, you can, by all means, but I'm choosing to end there because it's past already our height. Now, I can't really get access to this guy. So if you have a smaller tool, another option to put it in between, by all means. Or you can try to do a little bit of a freehand. That is perfectly fine too. You can always continue to take more measurements in width. That should do the job as well. All of these are options. For now, I'm going to just butt a quick square up against the decorative trim, and I'm going to account for the distance with my Sharpie, and I will just keep that same angle and pull it across. There's that one, and I will do the same here. Now it's hard because it's not in I can't see it in my perspective, so I will try to do my best. That is the wrong mark. This is the right mark. And there you have it. Now, if you do this, you've got your space. Very nice. All that work to line it up, it looks sharp, it looks centered. We know that that is our zone. So we're now ready for the next step. But we need to make sure that this space still has access on the other side, or on the black side of this door. So how do we transfer this to the other side? It's kind of important that you have a pad of paper and a pen, because you're going to have to be taking some measurements of the height of the door and the width of the door with respect to these 4 points. We don't need to be perfect in this situation. We need to be close, because we see here that there's a tolerance of 3/4 of an inch on either side, or 1.9 centimeters. And we said before 15.8 or 16.4 respective centimeters and inches. But we don't know where these are situated on the door. I see that the other side has the same, and if you want to go for it, by all means, you can, but do check what it looks like on your other side to make sure that the space is actually able to receive a hole or a unit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure from the edge of the door here to the butt end, not including the bracket, or whatever respective surface that you can flip over and transpose the information from. I will take my measurement from across. You can see there's a lip and then a secondary lip. That feels like that is the steel, and this is the wood. I'm going to stay on the wood, and I can see here that my mark is 11 inches. If I want to continue from this point, you can mark this point to say, hey, I'm going right here. Because I can say from that bracket, I will draw a small depiction of the door here, just quickly. I'm going to say that there's a bracket here, and I am now taking this point and pulling it across to say that at this intersection where my corner meets, it is 11 inches or 28 centimeters. So this is going to be 11 inches, 28 centimeters. I will continue to pass this point to find where my next intersection for my frame is. And I have here 22 and a half, or roughly 57.3. 22 one half, or 57.3. That is our point. We will have to keep a mark on it. And just remember that that is where it goes. So I'm going to put a little mark on it. What I'm now going to do is the same thing, but across the full height of the door. So now we need to understand that where our markings are located here, as well as the respective position here. Okay, so we have to decide where now it's going to fit on the door. The top of the door is reasonable because sometimes the bottom has these gaskets and lips. So if it's actually on a horizontal surface that you're working on, I think the top of the door is a good point. So I have a quick square here. I'm going to pull it to the top of the door and then take my measurement from the butt of this just to pass the decorative trim that I have interfering with it. I will also put a mark on where my measurement is coming from, but that is just in case some other door has a different texture or gasket that is on the top. So I see here 37 and 5/8 or 95.5. And I will go check on this side, and I have here 40 and 5/8 or 103 centimeters. Okay, good time. Double check your work. Make sure it all lines up. Make sure your tape measure was actually straight. Everything was in place. And then once you're done with that, we're good to switch it over. So I'm holding it again. You know, I can argue it's between the 1/2 inch and the 5/8, so like a 9/16, but we can be more specific if you want to be more specific. If the tolerances are really tight that you're dealing with, I would recommend being more specific because you want to make sure that you're fitting it in the right spot. Time for another flip. So now that we flipped it over to the black side, and this is the exterior side as well, I have already done a trace out of the area. So I'm going to put just a little markers here. We know from our white side that we took measurements from this point that we've marked, as well as the point over here that was marked. So what we're going to first do is bring out our trusty pad of paper and see if these at least 3 corners fit. In theory, we did one side on each, but because we are saying that this is square, because the decorative trim is square, then we can use that to bring it across to the other side. If it is not square and you are on an angle, you must consider the fact of making sure that it is square to your door, to how you prefer it. If it's on an angle, this trick doesn't work. You'll have to take all 4 corners and transpose it on the other side. But you are very highly skilled in that situation. And it's just patience at that point, just a little bit more work. So I'm going to go back and take my measurements across. And let's hope that we're within the mark. Got to make sure that I am on the wood and not on the metal. 11 inches or 28, that's good. And I've got here 57.5, which is maybe this one says 57.3, but I'm still within the mark, so I give a passing grade to these two. The next one is going to be the same thing. We're going to check to make sure that our measurements here are correct. I'm going to go back to where I had my mark at the top, and I am going to bring my quick square, butt it up against to be able to transfer the measurement across, lock the tape, and then I'm putting my finger down, and now we will see where we line up. So in this case, I've got 37 and 5/8 in, right in between, and 40 and a half, which is 40 and 5/8, 40 and a half. We're within tolerance here. So that shows that we've got a green light. We're good to go. We're not missing any other steps. Our piece fits, and we just need to make sure that we fit our piece in the marks here, and we can actually go right through without any issue. So we are getting down to the last steps before we commit to cutting into the door. We will go through a marking of the cutout, and we will then mark it, set some pilot holes, and then commence drilling and commence cutting. Please make sure that you have all the tools and that stuff isn't closing if you need to go get something, because you don't need to have a hole in your door or your door off your hinges for an evening. You can always seal it if you start cutting it with a piece of masking tape, some cloth, and that'll be fine. But if the door is off its hinges, I guess you'll have to put it back on for the night. So this is getting to the final steps.
Right now, what we see here is we have our 4 corners. I'm going to flip it to the other side because I think it'll give a little bit more of a picture. We worked on that one together. This is just a marking.
We flipped it over and we made sure that these all fit. So these are our lines. The only piece that you're missing is that you might not be able to see these exterior lines right now, but you can see the corners. So I think that's fair. We'll make sure that this is reasonable visually, and we will go ahead with it. So our next piece is actually the cutout for the surface so that the stuff can pass through the channel of your door. This measurement is going to have to be placed here. Well, how do we do that? With the surface, it's pretty easy. All you have to do is open it, and with a flathead or with your fingers, you can pull out the brushes. 1, 2. From there, either you can affix it with a piece of masking tape, or you set yourself up to line it with the dimensions that we've already set up, that your lines are in line, and then with a pencil, with a marker, with anything, you will take a quick interior stencil of the cutout of the surface for the hole. I will also do, in this case, I will set up all the holes just to make sure, and again be careful not to move it, that it is under tension, the flap, so it's a little challenging. And there you have it. Please note that this side is a little larger than this side. So if you're going for center on this, you're looking at the exterior. But if you have something, an existing hole or a change, you must consider this cutout for the channel first to make sure that this lines up. Great. We have set up our silhouette. For me, I'll quickly double check. I want to make sure that everything is good. I want to make sure that that line, let's say this is, I'm looking at the centimeters now, just the centimeters. It's 3.5, and I go here and I see 3.4, 3.5 actually. Yeah. So the lines of the masking tape look slightly deceiving to me, but this is properly set up. Now, we did a trace of the interior cutout. That's not a problem, because what we are actually trying to cut out is this whole area. You could choose if you want to cut out less, but we need to now remember that if we're cutting it, what side of the line that we just traced do we need to cut on? And if you are very skilled, you can use many different tools. For example, having a router to plunge it in and go in across. You can use a jigsaw with a blade to go across. You can use, if you wanted to, old school, use a circular saw to cut through most of it, then finish it off with a jigsaw. You can use an angle grinder to take off the aluminum, then finish it with a multi-tool to cut through it. There's many different options to start this. But what's important is that you must remember to cut on the outside of this line. You have a tolerance on the frame. Technically, it can be as wide as the frame of a hole, but for me, we want to try to keep it within the margins of, let's say, where the brush clips are. So we will cut on the outside of the line. There's the thickness of the blade that you could consider as well. Certain blades are different sizes, but that is how we're going to do this. So I'm going to now put this to the side in a secure space, and we're going to think about how we're going to approach this. There are a couple ways, and if whatever tools you have at your disposal is important to consider. If you don't have the right tools for the way that I'm showing, well, I don't think you can really do it that way. But that's okay, because you might have another set of tools that's better than mine. So we have already a stencil on the other side. What we can do is set up a pilot hole here to make sure that we're in line. But what my plan is, cut a hole on the four corners, and then take an angle grinder and grind off the galvanized steel to just get to the insulating material inside the door on this side. And then I will flip it over and do the same thing. Another option that you can do is take a large bit like this and set up a pilot on all four corners. Once the pilot would be complete, you can then take a jigsaw like this and you can pass it along the exterior. In this case, the space is just within the margins. So a jigsaw could work, and we might show that for a little bit. But if you don't have that option, well, you can't really use a jigsaw. So there is many different ways to solve this, and I'm just going to show you the one that I think is quick and clean. But if you don't have this tool, we will have to find another solution for you. So I personally believe that setting up a pilot hole makes the most sense. Using a wide metal bit, I'm going to account for the space on the exterior of the hole, and I'm going to proceed to screw it down. Now what did you see there? The metal twisted. The foam core popped out. That's okay. We have answers that we have solutions to those problems. So again, we're going to go slow. I'm going to change the speed, and we're just going to slowly plunge into it. Ideally, we don't want to get that burring. So we're going to go slow at the end. There we go. So that is 2. See, this one had a big burr that appeared, but that's all right. And you can see that the margin is just on the exterior. Now another option that we can do, which I think it'll be a good time to show, is using a grinder. Now a grinder is going to probably do most of the heavy lifting here and cutting this surface. But what we can also do is cut the little height here. So I'm going to set it up, and we're going to see how this goes. As you can see, the grinder went a little far on one edge, but that's okay, because we have the trim of the surface. There we go. And last but not least, I'm going to take off that burr. Still a little bit left. Whoop. There you have it. All that hard work to get to this point. It's not too bad. Not too bad. We're going to take this off after so that you can see it. But this is a pretty clear example of how just a grinder would be able to cut through this with some ease. Another piece that we have now is actually the foam core. You might end up catching yourself by surprise and only noticing that it's wood. But because we're here now, a long X-Acto blade will easily cut through the foam. And we know that you saw how it adhered to the back of this. We know that that is going to adhere to the reverse side, on the white side. Now you can be a little liberal with passing the blade further past the trim here, the what is now the inside of the door, so that you can get a clean cut. So that's a good time. So now it's free. It's kind of a free moving piece. All right, so remember, I just made a whole bunch of mess. I have chips, I have little bips and bobs here. You want to make sure that that's all taken care of. So maybe a little broom pan or something to protect the door. That's the important part. We made a little bit of a surface. We can put stuff down. It's all taken care of. So as you can see, that was the drill version. Pulled some of the galvanized steel up and burred it, which is not a problem because we came back with an angle grinder. Now, you could take a rasp and you're also able to file these down. And we will show that shortly once this on the white side is taken care of. So I'm going to place this here. I'm going to take everything off and we're going to flip it over and do the same thing with the grinder. Okay, we flipped it over. Good job. We've now made it to here. Problem is, we don't have our stencil. If we were wise, we could have put in pilot holes, tiny ones, through the corners and matched up our lines. But we're going to do it this way because I didn't do that. And sometimes if you set up a drill, and we'll use this as a large example, and you start setting up a pilot hole, if you're crooked, well then that's hard, because now you're trying to go through straight. If you come out crooked on the other side, you're trying to set up all your lines there, and you're not going to have a straight passageway. I think it's still within reason to set some holes, but I don't think it's mandatory. So again, we are setting ourselves up on the lines. We're holding it in position. And we are now going to create a trace of the interior of the surface nail slot, like so. Now, put it back. We can also put our markings for the self-tapping screws. We don't have to, but we can, because we're going to either, if we have the drill out, might as well set up a self-tapping point, just pre-drill it a bit. When we take all the masking tape off, we know where everything's going to go. So that's been put in. Got our marks, and now we're going back to the angle grinder and getting some cutting done. It always is good to double check to make sure. I believe that we are within the margins, that everything fits. You want to make sure that if you flip the door over, maybe there's a small chance that you actually considered to have the top of the door on the other side if you decide to do some twist or wiggle. It's important because this center of this is not the center of the surface. It's off a bit. So if you tilted it, you could have accidentally moved it over. Make sure that's in line. Make sure that it's all good. There really isn't much turning back after this. After you make this cut, you can adjust it, but it's gonna be timely if you start to adjust. All right. As I can see there, the angle grinder is actually obstructed, so I'm going to change my positions on that in a second. don't think we need the handle. There you go. There you have it. All the history sitting on this masking tape, all the stuff that we went through. Now we're down to the last bit here. Careful if you're using this as leverage. You don't want to put pressure on things that you don't want to break. There you go. Now, aha! It's almost like we did the measuring right. And oh, I got a piece of wood underneath there. That's okay. Ta-da! You get to this part, and everything else is smooth sailing from here. A lot of prep work to actually commit to doing the cut. Now you can just jump right in it and freehand it by all means, but if you want to make sure that you have a door that you want protected, you want to have the right seal, this is the best way to do it. Take your measurements, make sure everything is ready, that you're prepared, and that it can go smoothly. So I'm going to throw this stuff out. The foam core is interesting to see. That's how it looks like it's a closed cell foam. Provides some R value protection. And now let's remove this stuff off, and we will get to the final stretch here. Congratulations, you've set yourself up with a draft dodger mill slot. Okay, so let's clean up some of the mess. First thing, these edges, extremely sharp. You do not need to cut yourself on any of that. All the burrs, all those pieces that you have, if you're just installing the surface, it does not have telescopic sleeve. So be wary of that. This is the time to work on it, because you have still the protection of the masking tape sitting here. Wear gloves, don't hurt yourself. And then we can do it on the reverse side. It's a good time to clean up the core, but just for our visual aid here, there you have it. This is also a good time to show the self-tapping screws. Because this side is actually completed, we can install it. Now, the surface is a single-sided solution. It is to replace an existing male slot's exterior or interior to provide the insulating. So it comes with just one. So this is the interior on the white side. So I have another one I'm going to get that we will use for the interior. Provided with each surface has 4 self-tapping Phillips-head screws that are 1 inch in length, which means you could screw in on both sides equally and they might intersect, but not severely. It's so that you can actually pilot it in and you'll get some grip into the foam. So how do we do this now? Well, you have options. What you can do is with a number 2 Phillips head, set your screw up, and you've already set the holes so you know where it's going. Line up your mark, and there you go. That's one. Now you could do it directly. You don't have to. You can put that on, take all this off. But if you're here, might as well puncture the hole. Line it up straight. Keep a constant pressure. You know, speed is your enemy in some instances, and this is where I'd say it is. Go slow. It's not much material that it has to pass through. And there you go. You can use probably one of these for all 4 if you'd like. But that's one example. The other way, you can grab your metal bits, find the one that matches. You want to make sure that it's thinner than the threads so that it has something to catch. So for example, this one. This is, I see 7/64, and you can set up a pilot hole. Well, it should go quick. It feels like it's an old bit. Pardon me. There's your pilot hole. One of the final options, if you don't have an electric drill, you can take a fine point of any piece of metal or an awl, and you can sit there and you can puncture a hole through it, like I just did there. And if you really want to commit now that that's punctured, you can still get your screw. You can get your screw started, and now the self-tapping actually just went in, not a problem. So there's many ways to answer it. You could even take a nail. I wouldn't be surprised. Oh, I don't want to do it here, but we can try it on the other side. I wouldn't even be surprised that you could just hold this in place and take a hammer and knock it in. I'm also missing one because it fell to the floor. So this side is done. Let's clean up the surface. Make sure that your stuff is put away, organized and neat, and then we will install the silver surface on the white side of the door. And then we will put the brushes back on the black surface and put that on the black side of the door. If you want to change the colors, you can. You can do what you want. But the world's your oyster. So I'm going to put that all back so I know where to grab from. And now we do a little bit of cleanup. So we're here now. Good job. What we can do is just remove this part. We keep the rest protected. I mean, you can even cut a little bit on the exterior, but I don't want to do that because that will actually score the paint, which could allow for rusting to occur. And I don't think anybody wants rusting to occur. It is galvanized metal, but over time you will start to see water infiltration wherever it was. It'll get in there and it'll start chipping away at it, start breaking down the protection. You can always use a knife delicately, or the back side of it, to pull it up. Okay, so what have we noticed? There's differences. The pre-drill went well. It's small. It's still going to have to bore into it. The drill with the electric drill going down went very smoothly, no problem. The one that we hammered actually has an indentation. Now that's not a problem, but it is just something to consider. If you hit it with a hammer, it's going to indent. So, I mean, it's maybe, I mean, it wasn't self-explanatory. Hopefully it is now. But we're now going to double check to make sure that all of our edges are trim. Aha! See? Look at that. I just missed, and I just hit this. But that's okay. I did nick here, but I know that's in protection. So it's important. Once you remove your masking tape, you now have to take some serious consideration into not screwing up. Now, I've already passed it with the rasp here, but I do feel that there's some sharp edges. And if someone is using the nail slot to pass through small items, well, you don't really want their hands to get all scratched up. Doors are pretty robust. I mean, they have a nice paint cover. They have nice thickness of galvanized steel. They have a good core. And yours might be a little different, but they should all have the same principles that we've shown here. We're now down to the final step. There's a couple things that you can consider right now. The Draft Dodger surface model has two ways of fastening. You have, like I've showed before, the 4 self-tapping Phillips-head screws. They will be put onto the 4 corners. If you want to put another one, you can, by all means. The other piece that's here is there a channel that allows for caulking to be keyed into it. So this is your moment right now to actually put the caulking on and put it into place. Now, I'm not going to show that in this situation, but there is some steps to adhering caulking, getting a soapy spray bottle afterwards to spray it, and then you can clean up the edges. You can choose whatever color caulking you would like. That is a nice way to give a additional layer of protection for if, for example, you did hit something and there is an indentation or texture on the door. That caulking that's keyed in here will act like a moat that will push the water from the top and it will move it to the edges, and then it will fall down. Anything on the interior, if water does try to infiltrate on the top, it also has a moat that goes around the gasket and it comes out the bottom, which means that on the side, if you want to install it, it can be done. If you want to install it vertically or horizontally, or actually just face onto a platform, it can be installed. So you're at that point. If you want to put the bead of caulking, by all means. If you want to now install it just with the screws, well, we're ready for that too. So I'm going to pull out the manual and then we can go to the electric to finish it off. Remember, you got to be careful now that you don't impede yourself by scratching your door that you've worked so hard to protect through all of that work. Usually I found that the last step is the part that really screws up the situation. Perfect. Now I'm going to go like how you do the lug nuts on your tire, kind of diamond form. And we're just going to set it up slowly. We're not going to completely fasten it in. And if you have a bead of caulking, I would do something similar. Would tighten it very tight, but if you keep it just a little loose, you have some more protection, and you can retighten it a little bit later to really make that caulking squish and compress. This screw hole, the pilot, like we said before, was slightly smaller, so it's actually now chewing through the galvanized metal to take care of it. If you do adhere caulking, it will also help protect the holes as well as the frame, like the channel that we have exposed from moisture. But it is okay if it doesn't, because the product itself has a lot of features that will help protect it. That keyed channel, or the channel on the back, if there is nothing on it, will also take and collect the water and slowly move it across the edge. For example, if water does infiltrate here, well, the path of least resistance is to go across and down. It won't just have itself sit and try to go across. Now, there might be some surface tension, but if it does fill, it will move across and move out. Path of least resistance. So there you have it. This is the silver draft dodger surface installed on the door on the white side. And now you can see that you have your space. Your brushes are protecting it. And the brushes also act as a small protection for the rough edges of the door. It is important that you take care of it though. If it's installed on the inside, for example in this situation, before you completely leave it to its devices, you should prime it or prep the brushes. In this situation, you want to have the top brushes situated with the edge of it visible to you, while the bottom brushes are on the inside. Why it's important is if small letters come through, it'll hit the top and it'll actually curve and run through the edge to come out. That's what really keeps it working. If you have a very small piece of mail and your brushes are not properly set up at the beginning, you will have obstruction. For example, something like this, it will get tied into it. So it's important to make sure that the brushes are ready. Okay, I will clean up this area, we will flip it over, and now we will do the black surface. Remember, everything's important. When you take off stuff, you really want to make sure that you're not leaving a piece of masking tape, for example, stuck on the door. If you have the caulking, be careful not to touch it when you're manipulating it. Maybe it's wise to have the caulking done, have this partially screwed in, and then finish it off with the caulking a little bit later. All of this stuff can be considered, and the goal with all of this, of course, is just to make sure that you don't cost yourself more time. I say it all now, and you can consider what you think is important to you, and if you find more things, then take them into account. I can't answer everything, because I don't know what your situation is. But all I know is I can give you the best conscious thoughts to make your own decision. And now I'm taking off the masking tape, and I'm trying to make sure that all the metal shavings are staying onto it or put onto the towel, and I'll deal with removing it later from the towel. And if you didn't use a towel, or if you use just a piece of paper or newspaper, then you can just bundle this all up and toss it out, and that would be pretty easy to do. But for me, the towel is important because I can then put some stuff on it. If I do impact it, it'll be slightly protected, a little bit more than a piece of craft paper. Okay, so there's brushes on the other side. What? It's crazy. Alright, so we're at this point again. Let's finish it off. Let's make sure that everything is well prepped. So I'm going to bring back our draft dodger surface, and we are now going to install the brushes back. Again, like I said before, it is important that when you do install them, if you would like them, to make sure that the bottom brushes are not going to interfere with mail passing through, especially on the interior, when a small parcel ends up passing through. For example, in this situation, if you're looking at it, if it's receiving, it'll catch the edge and push through. But if you're trying to send it here, it's just going to slide down and create a protective. So in this situation, you want to make sure that the receiving side always has the option to have the brushes to pass through at the top, so it can push itself down. Let's put this to the side. Let's make sure that we're all protected here. So we ended up seeing on the other side that the metal was still not fully polished or cleaned up. There was still some burrs. So we're going to go ahead again, work on moving some of those burrs, while being mindful that you don't want to scratch something else off. Now I noticed already that the interior is actually collecting some of the mess. So possibly adding a towel like that is a wise decision. Now you can use a piece of sandpaper too. It just might take a little longer. Be careful with that as well, as you don't have any protection for your hands at that point. There you go. Now I'm going to remove the masking tape, but we can, at this moment, decide to do what we did last time. Set up the screws beforehand. Now I'm just going to use the electric drill for this on one of them, and I will show you the same method like we did before. So the electric drill works very well because you put it in with a Robertson number 2. It's a 1-inch piece of, it's a 1-inch screw and has a self-tapping head. So all you need to do is make sure that you go straight and go slowly, because it'll just cut right through that. It looks like about 2mm or 1/16 inch piece of stainless steel, galvanized steel. We do that once. Again, you can do that twice. And you don't even have to use all of the self-tapping. You can use this guy to go through all of them. The other option, like before, is you can take one of them, and with a hammer, you can set yourself up with just a preliminary indentation or hole, like that. And that should, I'll rotate it a bit more. One more hit maybe. Perfect. That already dug in a bit. So if you can see, I'm going to sit here with some force, of course, and I'm going to manually twist into the metal. And as you can see, it is passed through. And there you have option number 2. I'm going to do that again with, we can still use the same one. It's a pretty strong self-tapping screw. Line that up. Once, twice. I can see that it dug into it a bit. I don't want to keep pushing on it because that's actually indenting the galvanized steel of the door, and I don't want to leave an indentation that's not protected by the frame of the surface mail slot that has now been passed through. Okay, that was one screw to do them all with the drill method, or with a hammer and a Robertson number 2. I bet you could probably get through it just with the Robertson, but you could try. Tapping it in probably helps a little bit, but it is a self-tapping screw, so it should go through it with just a little bit of force. Now we're going to clean the surface, make sure that this is all nice and tidy. I'm going to try to leave some of the protections on, and then we can finish it off. We do a final check, decide if you want to put a bead of silicone, decide if you want to put a key of caulking around the rear of the surface. Again, this is a good time to double check that there's no burrs. I can feel one. If I just go across there, I can feel it picking into the glove. I'll go again, delicately now, because you can scratch all the painted surface. Be careful. Pass your finger on it lightly. Don't push too hard, because who knows if you're going to get stabbed. There you go. Now let's finish it off. Let's put our draft dodger surface black mail slot on the exterior of this door. The last piece to consider here is if you would like to put a bead of caulking, you will be able to now set it up into the channel to key it and then adhere it to the door. You can then put a piece of masking tape across to hold it in place, or at the same time you can take the self-tapping screws and screw it in. Line up the holes, set it up. I will use the electric drill this time. I'm not going to go all the way just yet. Make sure that you go across. You can always do very minimal adjustments right now by moving. There's some slightest amount of twisting. That one's in a little too deep, so you can't see it. But if we've already gone through all the steps to make sure that it's center, there should be nothing else that's interfering with us. There you have it. You've successfully installed a draft dodger surface mail slot. Good job. Now you can put the door back together, put it back up on its hinges, and you can receive your parcels or mail or valued items into the protection of your home. So I'm going to clean this up and then call it a day. Thank you for listening and watching and learning. Bye now.